The silent arrival, the Corvan Empire had ruled the outer spiral arm of the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their crystalline ships moved between stars like schools of luminous fish, carrying trade, culture, and the unspoken threat of their military might. On the fortress world of Kalos Prime, Emperor Thaxator reviewed reports from his vast domain with the casual indifference of absolute power. Rebellions crushed, trade routes secured, lesser species brought to heel. It was, as his advisors assured him, another prosperous cycle in the eternal reign of the Corvans. The humans arrived on a Tuesday, though of course the Corvans called it something else entirely. A single vessel no larger than a Corvan patrol cruiser emerged from a previously uncharted jump point near the border station of Nexus 7. The station commander, a veteran named Krexmar, nearly dismissed it as another lost trader or refugee ship from the unknown regions. The vessel was unremarkable, almost primitive by Corvan standards. Its hull was a dull gray metal, scarred by micrometeorite impacts and stellar radiation. No visible weapons, no advanced shielding signatures, just a simple electromagnetic broadcast requesting permission to approach. Commander Krexmar granted it out of boredom more than curiosity. The humans who emerged from the docking tube were bipedal, roughly the same height as Corvans, though lacking the distinctive blue-scaled skin and secondary arms that marked Corvan superiority. They wore simple black uniforms without ornamentation. Their leader, who introduced herself as Ambassador Sarah Chen, spoke through a translation device in careful, measured tones. They came in peace, she said. They sought trade agreements and cultural exchange. They wished to learn about the great Corvan Empire and share knowledge of their own small civilization from a distant part of the galaxy. Krexmar found them amusing. These humans had clearly traveled far to reach Corvan space, yet they brought no gifts, no tribute, no demonstration of their worthiness to treat with the Empire. Still, protocol demanded he forward their request to the sector governor, who in turn would decide if these newcomers merited the Emperor's attention. The humans waited patiently in the quarantine section, asking few questions, making no demands. They seemed content to observe, their dark eyes taking in every detail of Corvan technology and procedure. 3 cycles passed before the sector governor arrived with a small fleet, as was customary when dealing with new species. Governor Yaxnil was young for his position, eager to prove himself worthy of his recent appointment. He reviewed the humans' formal proposal with barely concealed disdain. They offered trade in basic resources, some mathematical theorems that Corvan scientists had discovered centuries ago, and a promise of peaceful coexistence. It was, he declared to his staff, the most pathetic first contact proposal in Empire history. The meeting took place in the station's grand chamber, a sphere of crystallized energy that showcased Corvan mastery over physics. Governor Yaxnil arrived with 50 guards, their plasma rifles gleaming, their armor humming with protective fields. Ambassador Chen came with 2 aides, unarmed, unarmored. The contrast was meant to be instructional. This was how the Corvan Empire treated with lesser beings. Governor Yaxnil didn't bother with pleasantries. The Corvan Empire, he explained, had standards for species seeking membership or alliance, demonstrated military capability, unique technological contributions, strategic resources. The humans appeared to have none of these. Perhaps, he suggested with practiced condescension, they should return to their home system and develop for another 1,000 years before attempting contact again. Ambassador Chen listened without expression. When the governor finished, she stood slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. She reached into her jacket and produced a small device, no larger than a Corvan's palm. Governor Yaxnil's guards tensed, weapons rising, but Chen simply placed the device on the table between them. It was a simple data pad, its screen showing a star map. This was their home system, she explained, pointing to an unremarkable yellow star. Around it, 12 planets, 4 of them terraformed, 8 billion humans spread across them. But then she expanded the view. The surrounding systems lit up one after another. 15 systems, 50, 100, each one colonized, developed, connected by quantum tunnels that Corvan science said were impossible. The human expansion had been quiet, methodical, and absolutely complete. They had been in space for only 200 years, Chen said, but they had learned quickly. Governor Yaxnil laughed. It was impossible. No species could expand that rapidly. especially not one with such primitive-appearing technology. It had to be a fabrication, a desperate attempt to seem more powerful than they were. He ordered his science officer to scan the datapad to expose the deception. The officer's scales paled as he worked, his secondary arms trembling slightly. The data was genuine. The quantum signatures were real. The stellar positions matched recent anomalies in their deep space surveys. Ambassador Chen continued as if she hadn't noticed the growing unease in the room. Humans, she said, had a different approach to the universe than most species. They didn't conquer. They didn't subjugate. They simply removed obstacles to their survival and growth. It was, she assured the governor, extremely efficient. The Corvan Empire had been identified as a potential obstacle. This meeting was an opportunity to recategorize that designation. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Governor Yaxneel's initial amusement curdled into rage. How dare these primitives threaten the Corvan Empire? They had ruled for millennia. Their fleets numbered in the thousands. Their weapons could crack planets, extinguish stars. He stood, all forearms spread in a gesture of dominance, and declared that the humans had just signed their own death warrant. The Empire would find their worlds and burn them to cosmic dust. Ambassador Chen picked up the datapad and touched a single icon on its surface. Every light in the grand chamber flickered. Every screen went dark for exactly 3 seconds. When they returned, a new image appeared on every display. The Corvan 7th Fleet, the governor's proud command floating in space where he had left them. But something was wrong. The ships weren't moving. Their engines were cold. Their weapons were dark. As they watched, the flagship simply disappeared. Not exploded, not destroyed, just gone, as if it had never existed at all. The humans had not fired a single weapon. They had not sent a single ship. They had simply decided that the 7th Fleet should no longer exist, and reality had obliged. Governor Yaxneel's rage transformed into something he had never felt before, something no Corvan had felt in 3,000 years of dominance. Fear. Ambassador Chen's voice remained calm, almost gentle. This was not an attack, she explained. It was a demonstration. The 7th Fleet could be restored if the governor chose cooperation over conflict. But if the Corvan Empire insisted on treating humanity as an enemy, then humanity would respond accordingly. Not with war, because war implied both sides had a chance of victory. Humanity would simply erase the Empire from existence. One ship, one station, one world at a time, until the Corvans were nothing but a cautionary tale whispered in the dark between stars. She gave them one cycle to decide. Then the humans returned to their simple ship and departed, leaving behind only the datapad and the terrible knowledge of what lurked beyond their borders. Governor Yaxneel immediately sent a priority message to the Emperor. The Empire mobilized its entire fleet, recalled every reserve unit, activated ancient weapons that had been dormant for centuries. They would not be intimidated by these humans. They would find their worlds and demonstrate true Corvan power. But even as millions of Corvan soldiers prepared for war, even as their scientists worked frantically to understand how the humans had done the impossible, a cold truth began to settle over the Empire. The humans hadn't shown them a weapon. They had shown them a fundamental difference in how they viewed existence itself. The Corvans fought wars. The humans simply edited reality, and somewhere in the dark between stars, the human fleet was already moving, silent and invisible, waiting to see which version of the future the Corvans would choose. The Erasure Doctrine. The Corvan Empire's response came exactly one cycle after Ambassador Chen's departure. Emperor Thaxtor himself appeared on every communication channel across the galaxy, his blue scales gleaming with righteous fury, all 4 arms raised in the ancient gesture of total war. The humans, he declared, were nothing but terrorists using tricks and illusions to intimidate the mighty Corvan Empire. The disappearance of the 7th Fleet was obviously staged, the ships hidden or their crews bribed. No species could simply erase matter from existence. It violated every law of physics, every understanding of how the universe operated. To prove his point, the Emperor ordered the immediate deployment of the Grand Armada, 5,000 ships strong, to seek out and destroy every human world shown on their fabricated star map. The galaxy watched in awe as the crystalline vessels assembled, their combined energy signatures visible from systems light years away. Other species, long oppressed under Corvan rule, whispered among themselves. Perhaps these humans, whoever they were, had finally pushed the Empire too far. They would be crushed like all who had challenged Corvan supremacy before them. The Grand Armada jumped toward the coordinates of the nearest human system, emerging from hyperspace with weapons charged and shields at maximum power. They found empty space. No planets, no stations, no debris. Just the star, burning alone and undisturbed as if worlds had never orbited it at all. The fleet commanders checked their instruments, recalibrated their sensors, sent probe after probe into the void. The gravitational readings were wrong. There should have been planetary masses affecting the star's wobble, but there was nothing. It was as if someone had simply deleted the planets from the cosmic equation. Admiral Crackstor, commanding the Armada from his flagship, ordered an immediate jump to the next human system on the list. They emerged to find the same thing. Empty orbits. Missing matter. The star chart said planets should be there. The gravitational echoes suggested they had been there recently, but now there was nothing. System after system yielded the same result. The human civilization shown on the datapad didn't exist, had never existed, or had somehow removed itself from physical reality. It was on their 15th jump that the humans finally revealed themselves. The Armada emerged from hyperspace to find a single human vessel waiting for them, identical to the one that had carried Ambassador Chen. No support ships. No defensive platforms, just one small gray vessel floating in the void. Admiral Crackstor ordered it surrounded, weapons locked. But before his commands could be executed, a voice filled every ship in the fleet simultaneously. The speaker identified himself as Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Expeditionary Force. His tone was conversational, almost apologetic. He understood the Corvans were confused. The empty systems were not a trick or illusion. Humanity had simply moved their worlds elsewhere when it became clear the Empire had chosen conflict over cooperation. The process was reversible, he assured them, but first there needed to be an understanding of the new reality. Crackstor demanded an explanation. How could entire planets be moved? It was impossible. A violation of everything known about physics and energy. Admiral Webb's response was patient, like a teacher explaining arithmetic to a child. The Corvans, like most species, thought of reality as fixed, immutable, governed by laws that could not be broken. Humans had discovered that reality was more like a vast quantum computer program, and if you understood the code, you could rewrite it, not break the laws of physics, but step outside them entirely. To demonstrate, Webb asked the Corvans to observe their own fleet. Nothing would be harmed, he promised, merely rearranged. In an instant, every ship in the Grand Armada switched positions. The flagship found itself at the rear. Escort fighters were suddenly in the center. Battlecruisers appeared where frigates had been moments before. No movement, no acceleration, just instantaneous repositioning of matter across thousands of kilometers. The chaos in the fleet was immediate. Collision alarms blared. Navigation systems crashed. Officers shouted contradictory orders as they tried to understand what had happened. Then, just as suddenly, everything returned to normal. Ships were back in their original positions. Systems came back online. It was as if the last 30 seconds had been rewound and replayed correctly. Admiral Webb's voice returned, still calm, still patient. That was a fraction of what humanity could do. They could have rearranged the atoms in the ships. They could have reversed the flow of time for the entire fleet. They could have simply decided the Armada had never been built in the first place, and reality would adjust accordingly. The Corvan Empire had ruled through superior firepower and technology. But humanity had transcended the need for weapons entirely. They didn't destroy their enemies. They edited them out of existence. They didn't conquer territories. They reorganized space itself to suit their needs. The galaxy the Corvans knew, the physics they understood, the reality they inhabited. It was all just one possible configuration among infinite options, and humanity had learned how to choose which configuration would exist. Admiral Crackstor, veteran of 100 campaigns, found his voice trembling as he asked the only question that mattered. What did the humans want? The answer was simple. Coexistence. Humanity had no interest in ruling the galaxy or destroying the Corvan Empire. They simply wanted to explore, to grow, to pursue their own destiny without interference. The Empire could continue to exist, continue to govern their territories, as long as they acknowledged that humanity existed outside their authority, outside their understanding, outside their ability to threaten or control. The terms were delivered not as a negotiation but as a statement of fact. The Corvan Empire would withdraw all forces from the border regions. They would cease any attempts to locate or attack human worlds. They would treat any human vessel or citizen with absolute neutrality. In exchange, humanity would not erase the Empire from history. They would even share certain technologies, ones the Corvans could understand and use, to help them maintain their position among the other galactic powers. It was not a surrender, Webb insisted. It was an evolution. The Corvans could choose to be part of the galaxy's future, or they could choose to be edited out of it. The decision was entirely theirs. He gave them 1 hour to decide, then his ship simply vanished. Not jumped to hyperspace, not cloaked, just ceased to exist in that location and presumably existed somewhere else. The debate aboard the flagship was fierce but brief. Some officers advocated for a glorious last stand, arguing that death was preferable to submission. Others pointed out that they weren't being asked to submit, merely to acknowledge a new reality. The Empire would continue. Their subjects would never know the full truth. Only the highest levels of command would understand that humanity existed beyond their reach, a force that could unmake them with a thought. Admiral Crackstor made the only decision that ensured his people's survival. He transmitted the Empire's acceptance of humanity's terms. Immediately, the human systems reappeared on their sensors, exactly where they had been before. Planets and stations and billions of lives restored to existence as if they had never been gone. The Grand Armada returned to Corvan space with orders to maintain a permanent buffer zone along the human border. The official report stated that a diplomatic solution had been reached with a new species of comparable technological advancement. But in the deepest vaults of the Empire, in files accessible only to the Emperor and his closest advisors, the truth was recorded. Humanity didn't wage war. They didn't need to. They had evolved beyond the physical constraints that bound every other species in the galaxy. They were not gods, but they were so far beyond conventional understanding that the distinction was academic. The galaxy had not met a new species. It had encountered a new form of existence entirely. The other species of the galaxy noticed the change immediately. The Corvan Empire, previously aggressive and expansionist, became cautious, almost respectful in their dealings. Trade routes near human space were left mysteriously unpatrolled. Border disputes in that region were settled quickly and quietly. When asked, Corvan officials would only say that the humans were outside their jurisdiction, a phrase that made no sense given the Empire's claim to universal authority. Slowly, other species began to approach human vessels, curious about these beings who had somehow humbled the mighty Corvans. The humans traded freely, shared knowledge selectively, and never explained how they did what they did. They were friendly but enigmatic, helpful but never dependent, present but never truly there. Ships would report seeing human vessels that sensors insisted didn't exist. Colonies would receive aid from humans who were never officially present. Problems would be solved by humans who, according to all records, had never been involved. The galaxy adapted to this new reality with surprising speed. The phrase human intervention became synonymous with inexplicable solutions and impossible outcomes. When pirates mysteriously disappeared from a trade route, it was human intervention. When a plague suddenly stopped spreading, it was human intervention. When two species on the brink of war suddenly found a peaceful solution, it was human intervention. Whether the humans were actually responsible for all these events was unknown and ultimately irrelevant. They had become a force of nature, as inevitable and mysterious as entropy itself. Years passed, and the story of the Corvan Empire's encounter with humanity became legend. Each retelling added new details, new impossibilities, new warnings about the danger of threatening human interests. But at its core, the message remained consistent. Humanity didn't fight wars because they had evolved beyond the need for conflict. They simply decided what reality should be, and reality obeyed. They were not conquerors or destroyers. They were editors, and the galaxy was their manuscript. The lesson was clear to all who had the wisdom to understand it. The age of empire through force was ending. The age of transcendence through understanding had begun, and humanity, patient and enigmatic, waited at the threshold of that new age, ready to guide those who chose evolution over extinction. The galaxy had learned to fear not human weapons or human armies, but human potential. For in the end, The most terrifying power was not the ability to destroy, but the ability to make destruction itself irrelevant.